Now, I am going to let Leslie introduce our next incredible International Women's Day speaker. I love and adore her, and we've chatted many, many times. And we just came back from 2 back-to-back events at the Oscars where her and her daughter were rocking the world. And I am going to show this incredible book, right? This I just love. Well, first of all, my kid's name is Ocean, so how can I not love the title and love the cover? But Unstoppable Women, Owning Our Voices and Leading Change. I think how absolutely fantastic. So my dear friend Kathy Holt, hello, hello, hello. Hope you listened to that music that I sent you this morning. And I am going to let Leslie. I was just going to say Kathy. I was going to let Kathy. I'm going to let Kathy bring you up on the stage.
Woohoo! Yeah. So excited. My super pleasure to introduce this woman. I got the opportunity to spend a little time with her when we were at the Oscars. She's amazing. But before I get into all that, I'll give you her bio. But you're in for a treat, right? Kathy Holt. She is an international best-selling author, and she has spent over 35 years advancing gender equality through university courses, political, policy, and advocacy work, including collaborations with the United Nations and global nonprofits. She's highly recognized, obviously, as a facilitator to teach women how to rise as leaders by recognizing their innate strengths, amplifying their voices, and leading with authenticity and impact. And as Deb mentioned, and I also have the book right here. She launched her first solo book that debuted at the Oscars Gifting Lounge last week. If you look on social media, you'll see her with a few celebrities. If she won the lottery, she would hire a personal hairdresser. I'm all in on that too. And then I wouldn't have to wear as many hats. And the music that she's listening to is Shivers by Ed Sheeran. But I want to give a little personal thing because I'm keen on that. This woman is just amazing. If you get a chance to spend time in her world, you will consider yourself lucky. Not only is she generous of spirit and so passionate about supporting women and supporting women's issues, you're going to be inspired, you're going to be in love with her. So one of her gift to one is a leader skills survey and a private call with Kathy to discuss your leadership goals and challenges. That's a $500 value. And if you don't know how this works, I'm going to give you a little clue because you all want this. And she does have a free gift to everyone. But first, the free gift to one, we're going to pick a question, give you a question. You're going to answer it with the answer and your email. Don't forget your email in the chat. First one gets to spend time with Kathy. And let me tell you, you're going to have to be fighting me for that chance. So you better be getting your emails already in there and then email and answer to the question. But everybody is going to get the first chapter of her book. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So the topic that we are going to get privileged to hear from Kathy about is leading change in your community from the ground up. And she's going to give us some tips on that. So take it away, the fabulous Kathy Holt.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. I know there's people from all over the world listening, and I thought for today, excuse my voice, but I did catch a cold coming home from LA and the Oscars, that I would get a little bit into the whole international scene, I guess you could say, of women in leadership, because we are celebrating International Women's Day, and I have done a lot of work on the international stage, but I will also weave in some more national stories, and some of these stories are in my book. But today, or this week, the UN is having a huge meeting called the Commission on the Status of Women, and about 20 to 30,000 people, mostly women, come in for this meeting, and they get to meet with representatives in the UN and the nation state leaders to talk about women's issues. And it really all started 30 years ago this year at a meeting. It was the UN Fourth World Conference in Beijing, China. And what happened is all the officials got to go to this meeting in Beijing. But the women from all over the world, many grassroots women, not necessarily professional women, but community women, decided they wanted to have their voices heard. So they flooded the whole city of Beijing. Almost 30,000 women showed up, and they didn't know what to do with them. So they put a tent in a city just outside of Beijing called Huairou and said, you all meet there and decide what you want to do. And, maybe we'll listen to you. Well, they met for almost 10 days. They came up with policies. They came up with, I guess you could say, some demands, because women weren't really talked about, or women weren't even considered in the whole development world of programs for the UN. And they were able to pass, actually the Secretary General of the UN came out and visited them and was so impressed by, one, the numbers, and two, how they were able to collaborate and work together to create a platform that they wanted to pass through the UN system. And it eventually did. And it was called the Beijing Platform. So 30 years ago, we had 30,000 women showing up to have their voices heard, to demand that their voices were heard. And it just continues to go on and on and on. And so I wanted to share a couple of stories of how we as women can start locally and build upon the our local power to create change, because I think it's very important to understand that we all have power. We all have what it takes to be leaders. The new leadership paradigm is somebody who, it's not the old curmudgeon in the office ordering people around. It's people who have emotional intelligence, that are compassionate, that know how to listen, that know how to communicate, that take other people's perspectives into consideration when making decisions, that invite other people to the table in decision making. We're more collaborative decision makers. So we all have what it takes to be leaders. It's just a matter of acknowledging that, developing those skills you have, and then learning how to strategically use them. And the three women I'm going to focus on have learned that, and I've been fortunate to work with them. The first one is a story in my book, and it's about a woman in Africa, in Kenya, who she just was a homemaker kind of thing, a mom trying to survive in a very poor village, and she saw that women were dying in childbirth because they lived far away from the hospital. And one day, the thing that really got to her was she actually saw, that trying to rush these women to the hospital without motor vehicles sometimes, or just any access, was really one of the reasons they were dying. They just didn't have the support they needed. So one day she saw a woman actually being taken to the hospital, or she was in labor, they're trying to get her to the hospital in a wheelbarrow. And she was like, no, this is just not right. Now, she wasn't born to be a leader. She didn't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to be a leader. She just saw a need and said, no, I can't accept this. This is not something I can accept. So she went to her local church, a very small church, but it was a community church, and said, can we have some space to set up a place for women to have their babies, and get some training for these women to help them survive what should be something joyous. And she did. The church gave her space. They went to the hospital in the neighboring town that was a bit far away, but she talked to them, and they were willing to come and trade what we would call midwives, and started providing some supplies, and slowly they built a whole community birthing center because she saw something she couldn't accept. Another woman that I work with in South America, she was a farmer, and she noticed that mostly men owned the properties and women did most of the farming. And she was frustrated because they were getting the money. I mean, they do all the work, they'd sell the products, they'd sell the produce, but the men would get all the money. So she thought, that's just not right. So what she did is she started getting some of the other women farmers together and saying, let's pool our money. We don't make a lot, but what we make, let's pool our money and buy our own land. And slowly they bought up their land, they farmed it, they got the money from what they produced and bought more land and more land. And now there's about 10,000 farmers in women farmers in the Honduras that worked together in this collaboratively in this coalition. Once again, she didn't wake up saying, oh, I'm going to be a leader today. I have a great idea. I'm just going to tell everybody this is what we're going to do. She collaborated with other women, showed them the need, showed them why this was important, and convinced them to follow her passion. And for the last story, I wanted to share a woman in Brooklyn who she was a victims advocate in a hospital. And she worked with a lot of young women who had been raped. And what she saw was that once they went through the examination and were taken care of, they were just discharged and said, go home. Well, many of them didn't have a way to get home. They were scared to death still. They were still petrified of just being in the world, given what had happened to them. And she was like, no, this isn't right. Once again, this isn't right. I don't think this is right. So what she did is she started a crowdfunding to provide rides for these women to get home, free rides for women to get home safely from the hospital after enduring such a devastating happening in their life. And what happened was it is in New York, she took it to the city council. The city council said, this is a good idea. We can find some money. Let's try and find some money. They found some money. And then they wrote a bill. She and a couple other women got together and wrote a bill and took it to the state capitol. And it became a state law. It became a state policy and a state law that women would be provided rides for free home from the hospital, safe rides after these assaults. So once again, these are all women who just stepped in because they saw a need. They saw something that they didn't want to see, that they didn't think was right. And I think that shows that it's grassroots. It's us in our communities. It's us in our little towns. It's us in our little passion where we can make an incredible difference. I think Adele's story is a perfect example of that also. She saw something that she wanted to share. And she did what it took over 7 years of, ups and downs and a lot of downs to make sure that story was shared. We can all do that. And I think my passion and my mission is to create a movement of women leaders. I think the world needs us now more than ever. We think differently, we work together differently, we consider other people's points of view and their feelings and how they can contribute. And we also look at strengths and often say, okay, you're strong at that. Why don't you do X, Y, or Z? Because that needs your skill set. And I think that's what we need now more than ever. And I just welcome all of you to step into your power. You have it. Just do a bit of self-reflection. And, part of my book is actually, and the workbook that accompanies it, is about self-reflection. Figure out what your passion is, figure out what your strengths are, and figure out what you don't like to see. And go for it. Go for it. And work with other women. It's all about collaboration. Not a single one of these women could have done it alone, but they found other like-minded people and they did it all together. So that's what my challenge is to you. As far as my free gift, I will put my information in the chat, but if you are all going to get a free copy of the first chapter of my book, if you go to my website and just sign up the wait list, and the wait list automatically will send you that copy of the first chapter. So I hope you'll enjoy it. And the first chapter is about self-reflection, because I think that's where all change starts, is when we know ourselves and know, what's important to us and where do we want to be in this world and how do we want to show up. So thank you very much for being here and sharing your time with us. I think every one of the people I'm seeing on the screen, because I know so many of you already, You are all leaders. Step into it. So thank you and have a great rest of your day or evening.
Oh my goodness, jazz hands and hearts. Kathy, you are such a 262 OG, but you were an OG before you landed on our stage in our hearts. You've done such great work for such a long time.